Lee Francis was a huge fan of comics and sci-fi growing up, but as a Native American, he rarely saw himself in the pages of comics. And when he did see Native characters, they were usually stereotypical villains or shamans or worse, sidekicks, but not heroes. Francis runs a press that publishes Native comic book authors. He also opened a new store, Red Planet Books and Comics, here in Albuquerque this month. Correspondent Megan Kamerick sat down earlier this year with Lee Francis and comic creator Dale DeForest. And this week we rebroadcast their conversation about the evolving world of Native American comics and graphic novels.
Lee Francis and Dale DeForest, thank you for being here with us. Lee, I want to start with you. You call yourself a proud Indigennerd. What is that?
I think it's somebody that has an indigenous heritage that's very interested in pop culture and nerd culture and all those intersections, but I don't think it's exclusively for indigenous people. My family is from the Pueblo of Laguna here in New Mexico, but I think it's for those folks that are really interested in seeing indigenous people portrayed within pop culture in an authentic and dynamic, wonderful, fun type of manner.
So you geeked out on comics and sci-fi and pop culture when you were growing up. What kind of representations did you see of Native Americans?
I think a lot of the times there were, it varied, and I think there was an evolution over time. Early on, you saw a lot of pop culture for Native folks was always in the Western. And so within the Westerns, it was often sort of either the villain or sort of the, there was never necessarily a Native hero. There would have it would have been a sidekick, right? So there would always be someone that would sort of help along. And then over time it started to grow, but there were still sort of the remnants. There was a lot of fringe, there was a lot of shamanism, there was a lot of spirit arrows that the superheroes would use. And so I think when I was growing up, the whole idea was that, you know, we'd latch onto really like cool characters. So I think of Billy Soul in Predator. You know, this great pop culture sort of character that, you know, was the second to last man standing with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And then when Star Trek came out with Chakotay in that, even though a non-native dude, it was really, it was something you could gravitate towards. And so I think that was, when I was growing up, seeing that sort of evolution is what catapulted me into wanting to do more of this sort of pop culture and comic book work.
So you have launched a press for Native comic artists and gamers, and you recently put on the first Indigenous Comic-Con here in Albuquerque. What are Native people bringing to the world of comics and sci-fi, and what is different than what we've seen before, like what you grew up with?
Yeah, I think it's bringing more, I'll say more authentic representations. I think it's ones that are delving into the real stories. It's not about the trappings, the cultural trappings, the cultural iconography, which is often what's used, right? It looks cool, there's feathers, there's buckskin, there's spirit arrows, and that looks awesome, but we have a whole generation of people that grew up in a pop culture age that want to see something that says, look, I don't mind the trappings, I think they're awesome, but I want to represent my culture in a way that begins to tell stories that are truly representative of the people that they are choosing to represent. I think the other part is that it's about getting, you know, folks into the industry. You know, you have a lot of folks that make comic books that are not indigenous, and that's not to say that they don't have the right or they don't have the ability to do that, but we want to be able to put more into it to say, hey, here's some other alternatives and some options for some really cool stories that are being told.
I heard people at the IndigiCon saying they'd see characters and like, there's like a Lakota shield and there's something else from Cherokee and there's like, what is that? I don't even know what that is.
It's all over the place. And I think that's exactly what we're bringing to this, is this whole, there's 600 plus tribal sovereign nations within the United States. We're not, you know, bringing in Alaska, you bring in Hawaii, you bring in our brothers and sisters to the south, then the global indigeneity. I think you have it's really about the richness of the stories that removes themselves, that elevates beyond what looks cool to what is really about the spirit, what is really about the struggle, the survival, the determination of Indigenous people, which is marvelous. And hey, Indigenous people get to, you know, I teach, my students get to have superheroes too. So I think that's why, you know, the work that we've done, and especially with the first Indigenous Comic-Con, bringing all these folks together to show that this is really viable and kind of awesome. So that was our whole purpose, a place to celebrate what's going on. That was really what we set out to do.
Dale DeForest, you were at the Indigicon.
Indigenous Comic-Con?
Yeah, and you sold out?
Completely sold out, yeah.
Wow, and you did this comic called Hero Twins. It's set simultaneously where you grew up on the Navajo Nation, but it's also touching on figures from the Dene creation story.
Dene, yeah.
Dene, I'm sorry, the Dene creation story. Talk about your inspiration for that.
Well, I took everything I loved growing up, all the cartoons I watched, all the comic books I read, everything I was a fan of, and basically mixed it with elements of the creation story and a lot of things that happened to me as I grew up, and I put it into a story and created something I thought myself as a 12-year-old kid would want to read, So that's what the Hero Twins is all about.
What was it like going to the first Indigenous Comic-Con? I know you've been to other cons.
Yeah, I've been to other cons, and I was quite nervous about the success. I was a little doubtful. Forgive me.
Hey, man.
I was a little doubtful,
No worries.
because at the other conventions, I tried to put something out that was Native related, something that was still close to my heritage, but still give some fan service too, with a lot of popular comic book characters or popular characters that are in media today, and I found that it just wasn't successful at those other conventions. But with Indigenous Comic-Con, I was immediately comfortable with producing Native American themed artwork, and my comic especially.
And apparently it was a real hit.
It was a runaway success. I was completely surprised and overwhelmed.
I heard people saying it's so nice to just be here. I don't have to explain anything and just jump right into the conversation.
Yes, it was remarkable how wonderful that feeling was, because we basically just set up and then people went nuts. And not just with comic books and movies and stuff, but again with the shields and arrows and things like that. People celebrated. It was a big celebration of all things pop culture in Native America, if you will.
How are you getting your work out there?
I rely heavily on social media.
Mm-hmm. Lee, you have created the Startup Press, Native Realities for Indigenous artists, comic artists. It's being incubated in creative startups here in Albuquerque. Talk about the name and why you saw a need for it. What's the landscape like for comic publishing?
I think the name itself actually comes back. There's a sort of a longer story, but when about 2000, I was helping my dad with a nonprofit called WordCraft Circle. And we decided that we wanted to publish a journal. We wanted to put a journal of Native writers and storytellers exclusively for Native writers and storytellers. And it's actually one of the earliest juried internet journals. And we named it Native Realities. The idea that it was about the actual realities of Native people, like what's happening right now. Not histories, not academic texts, but a lot of, it was plays, it was short story work, a lot of modern fiction, some poetry. And I really sort of adopted that identity, and I've used that as my go-to for a number of years. And when it came time to start a press and a house, because we also have an imprint called Indigenous Narratives Collective, and that is a smaller group that's sort of a subset that it's our imprint now. But Native Realities was really just this idea of how do we bring this pop culture world to life. So it's comic books, and then as we started thinking about it, well, why don't we do some games? And we've got a couple of card games and some board games and role-playing games that are coming out next year. And then we said, well, why don't we think about doing some toys and some merchandise with this? And so we started adding, so it's really this sort of one-stop shop for Native nerd pop is how we're talking about ourselves, right? The Indigenerd headquarters.
Well, one of them you have that just came out recently is this Tales of the Mighty Code Talkers.
Yes.
With Aragon Star, who created Super Indian. And it gives us a great view of the broader history of the Code Talkers, like all the way back to World War I, other tribes besides the Dene tribe.
Right.
Why did you want to do this?
When we went to Denver Comic-Con about 4 years ago, we had put out, we blew up like an image that Aragon Star had done that was a little Tales of the Mighty Code Talkers preview image. And people went crazy over it. They walked by our booth. They're like, "Oh, you have that? Can we?" And we looked at each other and said, "We should really probably."
Oh, so you weren't even
make
planning
this."
to produce?
We really weren't. Aragon's idea was like, "Well, what would a grandfather read to his granddaughter?" And then we looked at each other and was like, "We should probably make this comic book." And so we hit up a bunch of the artists and folks that we knew at the time, and we brought together this anthology, which is our most recent release, The Tales of the Mighty Code Talkers, to be able to tell those stories, because a lot of people only know the Marines, so the Dene combat, and we do have a story of that. We want to honor and reflect that as well, but we wanted to show that there's a broad history of Native people that participated as code talkers in this sort of storied history. And the way I've talked about it, I was like, in my mind, they're true superheroes. They are people that were told not to use a special ability, their language, that nobody else had, and they then were called upon to use that ability to save the world. So I can't think
That's
of a
a great
better
parallel.
definition
Yeah.
of a superhero to me.
So some of your other publications, like The Wool of Jonesy and Dear Woman, deal directly or indirectly with really serious issues in Native communities, including racism and sexual assault. Why are people using the comics or graphic novel form to get at these?
Because I think it draws on something that's deeper than what you can get in literature. And I'm a big fan of reading, I'm a big fan of literature, but I think the synthesis of imagery and text opens up whole different pathways into the brain. I think we often use this for young people to be able to look at, like Dale was talking about, like the 12-year-olds, to be able to draw upon these stories and these this iconography that we have. But for something like this, it's saying, we have a storied tradition of this as Indigenous people that goes back to the petroglyphs, that goes back to the rock art. And so we're actually drawing, I think, on something that's so deep and so buried inside of us as Indigenous people, as humans, that I think is why they're so effective. And I've been to Comic-Cons and people are telling these stories about how the one time they read the X-Men or they read Wolverine and it changed their life. And I don't think to be too egotistical about that, but I'm hoping that some of what we get out there in the world hopefully may have some small impact like that for people that read it.
Dale, your Hero Twins comic features two teenage boys who become superheroes in another realm, but it's also got really funny references to pop culture, like wax on, wax off. It hits someone like me who grew up in the 80s, and it riffs on life on the reservation. There are some serious things in there too. They leave behind their insecurities, they morph into these beings to help the community. What did you want to do with this comic? I know you're not necessarily delving into some of these harder issues, but it's sort of escapism, but not really, and it's really interesting.
Well, having fun generally isn't really escapism, is in terms of just, just wanting to be yourself. And I wanted to make something where I can just hold it in my hands and enjoy it, and not necessarily detach myself from everything that's happening in my life or anyone else's life, but just, bright colors, funny jokes, really, really good art. I just wanted to put something together that was just fun, and that's what resonated with me. I wanted to make something fun. I wanted to put this in the hands of people that would appreciate it by just, enjoying themselves, help them enjoy themselves, with a part of me involved.
What's next for the Hero Twins?
Part 2.
Now that they're figuring out their powers.
Yeah, it's gonna. I plan for it to be an ongoing thing. Just keep doing it until I'm not here anymore, and because I had fun with it. It was a lot of work. I did everything myself. I wrote it. I drew it.
It's a little unusual in comics, right?
It kind of is,
Yeah.
But the people who really, really love the craft know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
They find a way to print it. They find a way to stitch it. They find a way to fold the books, and they find a way to put it in people's hands. And that's exactly what I did. And I set out wanting to do this all myself because I just didn't. We spoke before about waiting for someone to give you permission to do this. We're not doing that. Lee's not doing that. These folks who created these books on this table are not doing that. They're not waiting for anyone to give them permission to do this. And so I set out to put those resources for myself together. I bought my own printer. I set up my own studio space. I did everything. It's all 100% me. So
you're just making it happen.
Yeah, I'm making it happen.
Well, thank you both for coming and talking about this. I'm looking forward to next year's con as well.
All right.
Seeing what comes out of
In the process, it's
reality.
great. Thank you so much for having us.
you.